Hey guys, welcome. In this video, we're going to be talking about the affair in August. And while I was trying to keep this as only a 1 or 2 day type of video, it ended up becoming more of a timeline to better explain why these dates, in my opinion, are very important to note. So, getting started, this affair in August video will begin just shy of the August dates in question. Let's take it back to 2017. We know from discovery that Watts had already been on Kessinger's radar, or at the very least, she was aware of Shanann and Chris Watts since 2017. Before we go any further, this was in fact confirmed by D.A. Ruark. Where this chance encounter happened or how she came to search them prior to ever meeting them is a question that has bred much speculation. We do have a couple of dates that stand out, and in this video, I will share with you why. As mentioned in part 2 of Hidden Motives, I believe this was more of a female stalking case that led to obsession and ultimately absolute destruction at the hands of them both. It was the perfect storm, an absolute shit show, and one masked by the facade of social media in a disconnection from their reality. So on August 29, 2017, we noted that Shanann is getting ready for her neck surgery. So at this time, she has a longtime friend of hers come and stay and, help out with the kids and help out around the house during her time of recovery. Now follow me for a moment. We know from the confirmed discovery that Kessinger searched Chris Watts on August 3rd, 2017. This is right around the time that Anadarko held several meetings for safety and liabilities due to the Firestone explosion. There were many layoffs, and it's noted in the Colorado Independent that workers were working with the skeleton team as opposed to the safety being, the front and center of their efforts. Depending on which theories you lean towards, this may be interesting to you. I'll link the article below so you can look it over if that piques your interest. Nonetheless, Kessinger had her sights on Watts in August of 2017, and it's digitally documented into evidence. It happened. Then somehow, fast forward a few weeks, and Kessinger either crosses paths again with Chris, or Chris was on her mind, and then she looks up both Chris and Shanann on September 1st, 2017. Again, this has indeed been confirmed by D.A. Ruark, yet it continues to be ignored. I say this several times just simply because many want to continue to state that this was a typo, and in fact it was not a typo. The DA has said it himself. They found this direct off of Kessinger's Google searches. He even says it himself in his interview or at the press conference that he has no explanation as to why she would have been searching for them in 2017. Let's move ahead to 2018. Did anyone find it curious as to how quickly the Kessinger and Watts affair seemed to really snowball? Think about this theory for a moment. Kessinger and Watts began talking Kessinger and Watts began, quote-unquote, talking and flirting back in August 2017. By August 29th, Shanann had her neck surgery, and her friend came to stay with her to help out with the girls. Kessinger and Shanann then participate in a fitness challenge being hosted by the hospital that Shanann used to work for previously. And in September, Kessinger searches for Shanann. So, somewhere in this time period, they must have been crossing paths locally, which means that Kessinger must have found her way to Colorado pretty early on. So in my opinion, this search was a check and verify search, just to see whether or not Watts and Shanann's Facebook profiles may indicate that they were separating soon. It's rather clear they were not. However, it wouldn't be difficult to disguise an emotionally flirtatious situationship when your wife has her friend living with you, and, that keeps her distracted, and the kids keep her distracted, and, of course, she's still recovering from surgery. So As anyone who has ever had friends or family come to visit, you know all too well that it's exciting and it's fun for a little bit, and that only lasts for a little while, and then it's time for everybody to go back home. They did just that in October 2017 when they took their trip to Puerto Vallarta. I can never say that. The photos of them together, in my opinion, are some of the most loving and genuine photos I've seen across social media since the day of their wedding. It's my opinion that during this time, Shanann was feeling much better after the surgery and was able to be herself again. The photos from this trip are some of my favorites. It was a time before Kessinger really dug into Chris. This concept reminds me a lot of those who do really well traveling together, and then when they are doing the day-to-day routine, they mentally check out. I question if this is where Kessinger found Chris's weakness, and he, in his own words, became addicted to the high that her attention gave to him. November 18th. Shanann is seen on live from her office inside their house, and Chris is chilling in the office chairs nearby. The two of them share loving exchanges, and in this moment, I believe that Kessinger's still hiding behind a keyboard at this point. She hasn't crossed that threshold of their marriage outside of well thought out, playful text messages that no doubt were inappropriate. Around November 21st, the tide starts shifting. There's yet another live, and when Shanann mentions Chris, we notice that Watts kind of perks up a little bit and it gets his attention. At some point, Shanann says, "Not that Chris," and then he seems to kind of dial it back down. Even while I was typing this out, I was thinking one thing, and then when I went back and looked at the footage again, it really didn't stand out as much to me the second go round. So, in my opinion, the indicator to me is that, Chris Watts, definitely it piqued his interest when he thought someone was looking at Shanann. But a lot of times, we all know that's projection. And so, before anyone kind of reads too much into it, I do want to say this, guys. Affairs, especially emotional ones, can start so very easily with just the right text or look at just the right time. If you argue that, then I might suggest you look into the brain chemistry that occurs with affairs of all sorts. It's not to say that people can't get close and can withstand their boundaries, but it's a very slippery slope. And this could be something or nothing, but what it did do was, in my opinion, the snowball to the end. On November 21st, 2017, Shanann posted a song alongside, it was a flipogram of photos, and it was to celebrate their anniversary. And on this video, the song that she included was Angel Eyes. And funny story about this and why this video is kind of taking a little bit longer to get out was I work the overnight shift, and a lot of times during the wee hours of the morning, I tinker away with YouTube videos if I can, just working on content. And for whatever reason, this song popped into my head about 2:30 this morning. And I don't even know all the words to it. So, I know the melody, and it just was playing very, vividly over and over in my head. And next thing I know, I'm humming it. And I'm like, why in the world, obviously I'm working on this case, working on content case related. So I know it has to do with the case. And I remembered Shanann having this anniversary video that she put together. And something just made me look up the lyrics to it and what's the meaning behind the song. And I found it very interesting that, again, the date of this one is November 21st, 2017. And as we see in the slide, what is the story behind the song, Angel Eyes? The singer remembers a former love. She remembers the way he looked at her and how it made her shiver. She thought she couldn't live without him, but now she knows better. The chorus warns her not to look too deeply into his angelic eyes, or it will cause her heartache. Man, I would love to hear your thoughts on the story behind the song and whether or not you think Shania chose that song because it is a classic, and in small towns it's most often, played live, and so maybe she fell in love with it because she grew up on oldies. Or do you think it goes deeper than that and she carefully chose the song to go for her, for her anniversary video? I want to say someone has mentioned in some other live before that may have been the song that they danced to at their wedding, but I don't have confirmation on that, so I'm not really sure. Now, by the next day, the 22nd, we see the Mean Faces video. Now, it's 100% speculation as to who was being rude to Shania and sending the mean faces, but I will tell you, after making this discovery of the flipogram video, and you know good and well it was posted publicly, and I have actually seen it on Shania's Facebook page, so I know that it was there and it was public. And so the day after Shania posts that, she goes live in the kitchen, and you visibly see her demeanor shift and change, and something tells me she was already getting this uneasy feeling about things. And then you see her when she questions them, excuse me, she then blocks them, but her demeanor completely shifts. And then the next day we see in the second video that Chris brought her flowers, in the next live. And it's been widely speculated that Chris bought Shania these flowers to reassure her that there wasn't anything or anyone that she needed to be worried about. He wouldn't be the first or the last man to show up with distraction flowers. November 29th, we see another video of Chris and Shania. This time they're in their Steelers jerseys. They appear happy, yet this video surely has some awkward pauses, but it very well could just be because of the length of it. While in my opinion it doesn't appear like he's unhappy, a certain neutrality comes across to me, but that's just my observation. It's my opinion at this time, Chris may have been feeling a little uncomfortable with the exposure online and in the videos, but by the time they went to Las Vegas together, he was vocal online about how he had the best view by looking at Shania. This is probably one of the cutest videos I've seen, so let's just take a moment and watch this.
Feel comfortable with the acceleration, and as long as we're not being too dangerous and staying safe,
Gotcha.
Cassandra said punch it.
So, you don't have much more. Well, you have a lot more, 41 miles. You've been riding this all day on a full charge?
We've been running all day on 205. We started at 10 o'clock.
In my Lexus.
We turned right this light. You guys want to check out the light?
That's a pretty cool key.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, that's really
keep
cool,
this in
yeah.
your pocket. You walk up to the car, the whole car will unlock, the handles will pull out. If you drive the Model X, you can walk up to your car and the door will open up for you as well as close. And then that Model X also has the Falcon doors that come out like wings and come back down. So you're gonna turn right at the second light.
Not this one. Are you familiar with all the Teslas? That's just this one.
Yeah, question, yeah.
Well, I was just thinking a bigger one. Like
Yeah,
a,
so the Model
SUV.
X, yeah, that's the Model X.
Got it.
So that comes with up to 7 seats. You can customize the layout for that. And that's one with the Falcon doors.
Comes with how many seats?
7.
And you can
That's definitely the one you're
You
getting.
can customize
Yeah.
the layout. So you can put 2 in the middle and 3 in the back. You can put 3 in the middle, 2 in the back, and the 2 in the back which
I was
is flush.
wondering
So you have an open cargo area.
That's nice.
You also have an engine in the front, so you have a little tiny storage space in the front for maybe for tools, things like that. Like right now I have a backpack.
Right here.
Yeah, you can turn right here.
You have a backpack in where?
In the front?
In the front?
Yeah, so the front doesn't have any, so we can't
That's
turn right
sweet.
on red.
Gotcha.
But when we do turn, stay in the right lane like we did here, and you can kind of punch it
Oh, she is going to.
But
You're going to have some good...
the light is short, so when you get to that light, that's when we're turning right. So you have a short space to do this.
You look really good driving this.
Yeah. And a great view.
The look Shania gives him will just melt your heart. And again, on vacation, they're together, they're having fun. Then it was time to come back home. Only a few weeks later lands us on March 4th, 2018. It's during this month that Shania has dinner with that attorney where clearly divorce is on her mind. So something had to have happened. She's growing more concerned about what life as a single mother in Colorado would look like and gathering information on Colorado family law. When you compare her actions this month to that of previous months and other precious moments, it's like deja vu. Chris mentions it in his prison interview with detectives. It's his only account of another woman, and then we see the direct quote from Shania, where it's on the Netflix documentary, and I want to say it's even in Discovery because it's in a text message, but she's telling a friend he's never been like this unless he was getting it from somewhere else. And so we see this in a direct quote in the Discovery and the documentary, like I said, but punctuation matters. And so taking note that this was a text and improper punctuation was used, the meaning definitely shifts. She's been through this with him before, and while she didn't think that he had any game to do it again, my guess is because she threw his ass out the first time and figured he wouldn't be so stupid to try it again. March 4th, Shania posts this post on Facebook where she's highlighting what she's done for the day. Her eyes look tired and teary, and she's loving on Cece in the photo. But my question is, was this the day that Chris was moved to the basement? Some say Shania didn't know about Kessinger, and I will agree that maybe she didn't know how serious it got and how quickly, but my guess is she intercepted a text or most likely a call from Kessinger, and then here come all the questions. Rapid fire like she did previously, no doubt, put Chris in his place and made it known real quick it wouldn't be tolerated. Down to the basement he went. Something happened earlier in the month of March that had to have been bad enough to warrant Shania asking questions so in-depth about divorce to a stranger. That was not a coincidence, in my opinion. Shania's mama instincts were in overdrive, and she knew if it all went south, she needed to educate herself. It's because of this conversation with the attorney I personally believe she decided to throw herself into the marriage as much as possible. If you've ever been through this in a marriage, you know there are some good days, neutral days, and days from hell. So the roller coaster we see on social media, no doubt, is an accurate documentation of a woman hanging on for dear life to a family that was being consumed by a parasite. In my opinion, it was March 4th when Kessinger was known and exposed. Maybe it was just a textationship, but it was one that Shania felt threatened, and down to the basement Chris went. Here's the audio clip from the prison interview where he's describing an incident back in North Carolina, and this is back when they were dating. So a couple of things I want you to keep in mind. We don't have names of anyone that he's dated in his past. I know that there's one or two channels that have actually interviewed someone who said they were like the only girlfriend he ever had before Shania. However, I was re-listening to the prison interview last night and noticed he mentions having dated before, just maybe nothing serious. So this woman he's talking about was potentially not someone that he had a relationship with, but maybe it was actually someone who was trying to pursue him. But during the time this woman was pursuing him, he had already moved into Shania's house in North Carolina. So they were only engaged for about a year, and then things moved rather quickly. So whoever this person was that called and reached out to him, Shania nipped it. And my question is, who was she? Was this Kessinger back in North Carolina? And then now she's found him and located him in Colorado, and things have started picking up. Let's listen and drop in the comments below what are your thoughts.
Only once in our entire relationship I ever seen her that way.
Yeah. And that was a time before, or was that on the night that happened?
No, it was right back in North Carolina.
Oh.
It was just like one of those. It was just a fiery argument that I never raised my voice to her or anything, and I just got mad and I slammed the door, and she's like, I'm like, should have slammed the door.
Is that when you were in North Carolina that last week?
No, it was like
previous to
this
that.
was like 2010, 2011.
Oh.
It was like early. In her old house.
Before kids?
Yes.
Were you dating or were you married at that point?
Dating.
Oh.
Yeah, it was just like I don't remember what it was about. I think some girl maybe texted me like from my past or something, and like I was just like this, and she was like, "Don't have that happen again." And I'm just like, I have friends, right? They're females. Like I don't even talk to this woman anymore.
Right.
It was just like
March 10th and 11th, they appear to be on the upswing. And then by later in the month, it would appear as if Shanann is receiving some emotional attention from someone. Could be a guy friend or even her girlfriends. I mean, her sassy side seems to emerge, and she's mentioning, like going out for an evening of dancing. But I mean, I don't know about you. This could be interpreted two ways. It was attention from another male or a friend. Friendly is all the same when you're at a low. And we all know the speculation around someone with the initial CM, but I'm not going there in this video. While I remain indecisive about my opinion on that, it's not hard to believe, and it's also just as equally possible it was friendly support. The other option is something I enjoy doing when I have a difficult day, is I'll put my headphones on while I clean and legit have the most out-of-tune dance party of one. Usually I feel much better after you dance it out, and of course it helps when things are clean. At this time, Shanann is praising Chris online, and we see this happen often. For those in covert abusive relationships, this is often a great or red flag that loved ones don't really know to be on the lookout for. There isn't anything wrong with loving and doting on your spouse, but those closest to the couple, more often than not, know when maybe things haven't been kosher, yet suddenly there's this overly romanticized post praising the spouse, when just as quickly as she hits post, the mask falls, and it's an immediate regret, because who would even believe he's this horrible behind closed doors when all one does is praise him publicly? Think about it. Put together all that effort and work to put that post together about how wonderful of a man he is, thinking that if he sees it, he's going to appreciate that, you're bragging about him. Yet the moment you hit post, he just verbally lashes out and assaults you. I'm not saying that's what happened here. I'm saying that you definitely can pick up on a roller coaster of, she's really singing him some praises online. She's doing it the best way she knows how. And I'll touch on this later on, but she was doing it online and Kessinger was doing it in person. It's an isolating hell that I speak of from personal experience, as do many others, unfortunately. I'll give a prime example of this using a post that I made not too long before my divorce was filed. The truth behind the post was absolute hell. Yet, the comments about how wonderful he was nauseating the moment I hit post, and I could hear him walking upstairs. Maybe it was wishful thinking or anything. Those close to me knew it and saw right through it. My inner circle called and checked on me almost hourly for a couple of days. I share this because it's not limited to just a Netflix special or a Dateline episode. It happens every day and is so passively hidden it's worse than a snake in grass. One minute you think it's getting better, just enough to sigh some relief, and then before you know it, the snake bites and you're stunned. By March 26, 2018, it was interesting that Shanann posted about, quote, when your ex tries to rekindle an old flame. The timing is interesting given all that's led up to the end of March. Was she referring to the old flame that once upon a time called Chris and Shanann, put him in his place? Did that woman resurface? And who was she? Chris still never releases her name. And again, someone's been interviewed before, but not much has really come of that. And I don't really know necessarily that it's the same person, because he does allude to at least having dated a few people. We hear Chris in the prison interview state, she was just a friend, just a female friend, and he even says something to the effect of, what, I can't have friends that are girls? And it's like, clearly not, Christopher. I did cover this timeline throughout the summer in a separate video. However, I want to note that over the course of the following months, Shanann and Chris continued the cycle of attending trips with Lavelle and seemingly having a good time, then returning home, and the same cycle of post contents occurring. It's once they return from Thrive-A-Palooza and Shanann hosts a tasting party at the house where she mentions that on May 3rd that Chris is much happier now that he's back from the gym. This date, in my opinion, is when the Kessinger-Watts situationship began to test all physical boundaries. The physical aspect was on hold. But was this the start of skipping out on husband hosting to entertain the other woman? Several have questioned if the two met at the gym, and I was able to find some photos of the gym she was attending at the time. It's since been closed down, and some of the images were kind of interesting to look at, but they were dated a little bit later in August of 2018. It's also noted that on May 3rd, Shanann begins stating that Chris is getting in shape for San Diego. Yet, we already know that Chris states he was already seeing Kessinger at this time. So it's very possible that he left Shanann at home with her friends, having her party at the house, and went to go see Kessinger. Regardless of what kind of quote-unquote workout it was, I have zero doubts that she was involved. Keep in mind, at this point, they were still communicating with work phones, so there wouldn't be a trace given this is long before the murders. May 5th will forever be a day when I firmly believe Shanann spoke directly to Kessinger via her Facebook Live. Again, look at the dates. May 3rd, he goes to the gym. Something isn't right. By May 5th, they're having a conversation. This, in my opinion, was the day on the couch where Chris used having another baby as a means to yet again reassure Shanann that they were going to be okay and they were going to work. I have the video with the original audio posted on my channel, so if you want to go back and watch the full video, you can do that. Keep in mind, it is a sales pitch for Thrive. However, if you listen to the rest of what she says, if you've ever been in her shoes, you already know. Kessinger's response, in my opinion, is the creepy giggle that we hear and is noted in the discovery. In my opinion, it's a sick attempt to mock Shanann's video in the following post where Shanann outwardly states that Chris, quote-unquote, loves me. And she continues to advertise the success of the car bonus, yet it's noticeable that Chris is trying to stay far away from the phone in the videos. I've often wondered if on Purple Shirt Video Day was that when Shanann yet again intercepts Kessinger on Watts' phone, whether this is a phone call or a text message. By this time they were getting bold and no doubt were starting to slip up. Watts tries to explain to Shanann that Kessinger doesn't have any friends and is new at work. Again, just my theory and my thoughts, but if Shanann were to intercept a phone call or a text message and, Chris is just like, well, she's new, she doesn't have any friends, she's just reaching out to me, I told her it's okay. I don't really see, with his history, I don't really see that flying with Shanann. And in my opinion, this is when that emotional conversation ensues. And the end result is that the plan for baby number 3. And thus the live video that we see. So without going day by day, later on in May, it appears Shanann launches a full steam into supporting Chris, with his fitness regimen. She starts meal prepping with him, which she's done that previously. but I have the cell data showing that Chris didn't only download MyFitnessPal for Kessinger. Like, he's had MyFitnessPal before numerous times, and it had been downloaded, deleted, re-downloaded. I mean, you literally see him transfer it, I believe, from an old phone as well. I did highlight this segment in my notes, and will definitely be bringing over the phone records that I have showing the digital data for his app downloads, and we'll go over that in the live. The positive posts keep up for a few days, and by May 24th, they cease. Her good friend Cassie arrives in town and surprises her. There's a couple of days of good stuff, and, if you know, you know. The posts continue to cease with few and far in between days. By the time she begins planning the countdown for North Carolina, it's my opinion she mentally had prepared herself to not only vacation and give this every opportunity for her family to come closer together, or she was going to capitalize on the business end of her small town and the MLM supporters there to really put some money away. One thing I made note in my recent video about visiting Aberdeen, North Carolina, was the amount of MLMs that are sold and promoted so openly within the city limits. One trip to the grocery store, and it's like billboards were walking around for LuLaRoe and 31 bags and, just all the things. So why not add Thrive into the mix and make some money on vacation? Especially if things didn't turn around. She had to get some money in the bank. June 5th is the first day the emails are discovered between Watts and Kessinger at Anadarko, yet we know from a co-worker's testimony that he had seen them getting pretty close and cozy at the water fountain back in March of 2018. So yet again, March comes back up. On this day, Shanann posts, "Some days change you forever." It's a quote someone else uses for their Thrive experience, but it definitely is pretty fitting. By June 12th, we have baby announcements, and just as quickly, it's followed by houses being searched in North Carolina. Things clearly are not going well, and it's back and forth, and we now know that Kessinger and Watts were really heating up during this time. June 15th, Shanann posts about Chris, quote-unquote, talking to strangers at work. Yet we know it wasn't a stranger. While I wasn't wanting to go day by day, it really is hard not to include quite a bit of this. Shanann was back on a supportive swing for Chris around Father's Day, doing the loving promotional type Father's Day post, and it's just what she did. Yet the following day, it must not have gone over too well. So the mood in the post shifted very quickly. By June 18th, Shanann posts, "If you've decided it's over, then it's over." And Shanann boldly posts photos with her wedding ring showing, making sure that this happens over and over and over again as much as possible. Chris misses Nico's first ultrasound, and the distance grows. Then it's off to San Diego. I've mentioned before that this trip will be its own video. However, I want to note the growing distance is noticeable almost immediately in the video of Shanann showing off the room. While there is a lot to cover about the trip, I do believe that Miller's mother played a significant role in smoothing over the superficial differences between Watts and Shanann, to the point that by the end of the trip they were a little more at ease with each other. By June 26th, they fly home, and then Shanann and the girls are off to North Carolina. By June 27th, Chris wastes no time. He lays it on thick about loyalty and lollipops when texting Kessinger, and between here and mid-July, things become seemingly more exclusive with Kessinger and Watts. They are openly going out to museums and movies together. By July 16th, Shanann's visiting Camping World in North Carolina. I've shared previously my thoughts on this as being this is a legit option for a single mom getting back on her feet. I did this through nursing school myself with my own 2 babies, and I've often wondered if this was a thought that Shanann may have had, and that was to buy an RV or a camper and stay on her parents' property until she could work and save up again for a house. She may not have managed her money well, but she knew how to thrive beyond a temporary setback. I have no doubts in my mind that if she was given the chance, she would be highly successful today, especially given the online marketing and, the clothing sales. Good God, I think she'd be all over TikTok. By July 21st, Watts and Kessinger have their romantic date in Morrison. I know that ATS News and CDT just covered this a little bit on their recent live, so if you want to go check that out, head over there. But the restaurant that they ended up going to was not just like a beer pub type of place. It was actually a nice Italian restaurant. And so that's what's reflected in the bank statements. And the rooftop place they seemed to have dined at, reflected the following searches, because Kessinger then searches man I'm having an affair with, says he will leave his wife. So July 21st, Chris tells Kessinger he's going to leave his wife. And by July 31st, he leaves for North Carolina. Yet Kessinger tells law enforcement that she encouraged him to work things out with his wife. Keeping in mind where this video started, August 3rd, 2017, was the first search noted for Kessinger involving Chris Watts. Now, 1 year later, when he's supposed to be working on his marriage, watch just how much this heats up around this time period. And this is what I believe is Kessinger and Watts' dating anniversary. Chris arrived in North Carolina very cold towards Shanann and to some degree of separation from the kids. He wanted nothing to do with Nico, nor cared to ask how Shanann had been doing. August 3rd is when Shanann makes note of Chris changing his phone wallpaper to the sand dunes, and the following day on 8/4, Kessinger is searching over 2 hours for wedding dresses, and then she looks up both Chris and Shanann's Facebook pages. It's also during this time that Chris is spending time with his parents and writing the note. August 7th, Chris says he doesn't want Nico and only wants the girls. That brings us to 8/8. 8/8, in my opinion, is the day when Chris finds himself caught in the midst of not one, but two furious, infuriating females. 8/8 is the day Chris will see Nico for the first time via ultrasound, and yet it's also the day Kessinger is searching for wedding dresses. I don't believe this is a coincidence. Chris tells Shanann they aren't compatible any more than he wants a divorce, but not right away. He also refuses counseling at this time. Kessinger makes a phone call to her mother, and her mother ends up sending her money in the coming days for shoes. So, what shoes? I mean, it almost sounds like her mom sent her money for wedding shoes. I don't know, it's a bit much. That's speculation. But Shanann and Chris have reached a point where Shanann tells him not to come home without having an answer for her. And mind you, Chris pulled away from Shanann during the ultrasound. So in my opinion, this is the day when Kessinger tells Watts that she wants to give him his first son. And while this is 100% speculation whether it's true or not, I believe she told him something along the lines that she was already pregnant, or that she thought she was pregnant, because Chris has been, I do believe it was the prison interview, he states that the weekend at the sand dunes changed everything. And if you calculate the weeks up from that date, and it puts Kessinger between 4 to 5 weeks, possibly further along, depending on when she conceived. And in that moment, Chris realized he was center stage at his own shit show. 8/9 was the photo of the doll. And by 8/10, Shanann reaches out to Ann Meadows about selling the house. Based on her conversations with the realtor, it's clear, even on the best of terms, she and Chris were most likely facing an uphill battle to sell the house and clear enough to relocate before filing another bankruptcy. This would be stressful for the best case scenario, and unfortunately, they weren't even halfway there. 8/8 is a day where Chris realized just the amount of hell he had created. Even if Kessinger wasn't expecting on that day the stress from dealing with Kessinger and Shanann, dealing with the house, looking at the, bankruptcy, that would explain the apparent turnaround that he was experiencing. And this day is where my theory pretty much splits into several different positions. I believe on 8/8, Chris knew that one way or another his life was about to change. One theory I have is that Chris was returning to Shanae and the kids. He was pulling away from Kessinger. We see this happening. She even states it. He was growing a disinterest in apartment searching with her, and he was actually helping Shanae look for a home. He had given Shanae some ideas of where he wanted to live. He states he should have never gone to the Lazy Dog that night, and very well could have been waiting up for Shanae to give her a hug, make sure she, made it home safe, and even with the Lazy Dog, go ahead and have that conversation, and then just, they could talk it out, they could work through it in the morning, and they had a trip planned for just the two of them to reset and refocus, because that's how they do things. Kessinger went off the deep end, as any textbook stalker would, and that results in she showed up unannounced and all hell broke loose that night, or she showed up that morning after Chris left for work to confront Shanae. And in my opinion, that is very likely. Another one is that Chris solidified the plan at the Lazy Dog with Kessinger and then tried to back out during the 111-minute phone call. But it was too late because Kessinger was determined. These are a few of the several working theories that I keep waiting for another half-honest confession to help piece these things together and make it make sense, or for the truth to finally be revealed. For the sake of all families involved, I pray 100% justice is carried out, no matter how God, karma, or the law sees fit to do so. At the very end of the day, Shanae, Bella, Cece, and Nico did not deserve any of this, and anyone having a hand in this horrendous crime should be brought to justice. It's my firm belief that August 3rd through 8th was significant to the relationship between Chris and Kessinger. It's the perfect storm leading up to a year-long affair that began with a friend and evolved emotionally until ultimately physically. At the 1-year anniversary, as any female would do, in my opinion, Kessinger initiated the whole "what is this" or "what are we doing" type of conversation that night on the rooftop. It was decision time for Chris, and he was conflicted. We see his struggle, and yet we see the continued pressure pushing from Kessinger. No doubt the intoxication from the affair was weakening, and she knew when he left for North Carolina, if she let up, she would have lost Chris. Kessinger knew she had to keep a hold on him, and that's why she kept sending him the nude photos while he was in North Carolina. I firmly believe that if she had left him alone, he would have completely walked away from her. Shanae and the kids would have had him back, and they would have been working on their marriage. You don't get to 8 years without having the ability to work through your differences. If you stay long enough, you don't make it out. Whether you're in a box or a hollowed out body so broken with lifeless eyes, you never make it out the same. Gray flags mask the red ones, and then you're dead. You're dead inside, numb, disconnected, or worse. Just because someone doesn't leave a bruise doesn't mean it isn't abuse. All relationships and friendships have the chance to become toxic. It's so important to recognize these behaviors not only in others but in ourselves and work to change. Most adults today are walking abuse billboards, commonly lashing out defensively, as each has learned throughout life. I believe wholeheartedly Shanae was doing some deep reflections on how she treated Chris and was ready and eager to do better. She was aware they needed a change. Unfortunately, she ran out of time. When you know better, you do better. Don't accept perpetual excuses from adults unwilling to be accountable and change. If you or someone you know is a victim of domestic violence, please tell someone, or call the number below. Friends, be there for your friends, free of judgment and open to listening.
Bye, guys.